Commence primary ignition.
Welcome to Unlimited Power. My name is D-Rod, and thank you for watching one of my pre-release guides for Star Wars Unlimited's new and fourth set, Jump to Lightspeed. Now, Jump to Lightspeed pre-release begins on March 7th, where you're going to be introduced to new cards with new mechanics, new leader actions, new abilities, and new tokens. You're also going to see the growth among factions in Star Wars, like Rebels, Resistance, First Order, and Imperial. If this is your first time watching one of my guides, I'll let you know that we're going to be looking at commons and uncommons within this set that can strengthen the synergy with the leader you choose to play. There are going to be some great rares and legendaries that fit really well with some of these leaders, but the chances of you pulling a rare or legendary that does that is going to be a lot slimmer than your chance of pulling a common or uncommon in your 6 booster packs that can really fill out your deck and the theme you're working for. With that said, let's begin to look at some of these leaders and see what kind of fun we can have on pre-release day. So let's talk Boba Fett. One of the guaranteed leaders you can find in your pre-release kit, Boba Fett is an aggression villainy leader that introduces us to a lot of the new mechanics found in Jump to Lightspeed. On his leadership side, we see that when you deal non-combat damage, you may exhaust this leader, and if you do, deal 1 indirect damage to a player. That player has to assign 1 unpreventable damage to either a unit or a base they control. This forces your opponent to make decisions to pull themselves out of their next play where they have to decide where should this damage go. And that can really matter, especially if your deck has a lot of this consistent indirect damage. That math adds up fast, as we've seen in previous Star Wars games like StarWarsDestiny. Now, as an epic action, we're going to see that Boba can do one of the new deploy mechanics we've seen in the set. So when you have 6 or more resources, you can either deploy him as a leader to the ground arena, where he's a 4/7, or you can deploy him as a pilot to a vehicle in your space or ground arena. Now, when he is assigned, he says, when deployed as an upgrade, deal up to 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of units. So now you get to pick where the damage goes and spread that around a bit. He also gives that vehicle a +4 attack and a +4 health, strengthening how much it can do that turn. I really like Boba Fett in all aspects of Star Wars, but I think this card is just going to be one of the best cards we're going to see within this set in constructed and limited play. Now, he is a little bit slower because you have to meet this condition of dealing combat damage to trigger his 1 damage bonus, so he's slower than other previous cards like Sabine. Also, you lose this pinging mechanic once he is deployed, so you want to make sure you're at least hitting this 4 out of the 5 turns before you deploy Boba Fett, if possible. So let's look at the commons and uncommons that can really make that work. The first one is going to be the First Order Stormtrooper. It's a 1 cost unit that is a 2/1 common. Already I like this. So the 1 is probably going to make a lot of people think, well, I don't want to take 1 in a set with indirect damage. However, when we get to the text box, it reads, on attack and when defeated, deal 1 indirect damage to a player. So even if your opponent kills it, as soon as you play it, you're still going to get that 1 indirect damage going, which can trigger Boba Fett, giving you 2 indirect damage. Or if you're lucky and you can hit once and then die, you can do a total of 4 damage that turn. Really love First Order Stormtrooper. Really happy it's a common. Now in the uncommon slot, let's look at some strong synergy here with Dengar, one of Boba's bounty hunter buddies. He's a 4 cost unit. That's a 5/4 when you play him in the ground arena. But he has the piloting mechanic, which gives him an alternate cost. You can pay 2 to attach him to a vehicle, and on attack, he will deal 2 indirect damage to the player. If that vehicle is an underworld unit, deal 3 indirect damage instead, and he strengthens that vehicle's power or attack by 1 and their health +2. So he doesn't give the vehicle a lot of attacking power besides the on attack trigger, but if you play that right, you could have a Dengar that's doing a significant amount of damage for you every turn. Next is the Decimator of Dissidents. What, what a title. This is a 4-cost Imperial space unit, and it is a 3/5. If you have dealt indirect damage this phase, this unit costs 1 less to play. So if they kill that first Order Stormtrooper on your second turn, you could play the Decimator for 3 instead of 4. It has the Overwhelm mechanic, meaning that when you swing into a unit, any excess damage will go to that opponent's base, allowing you to get more damage through and quicken this game. What are some other cards that fit within the aggression aspect? Well, that's going to be System Shock, a 1-cost red event that allows you to defeat a non-leader upgrade attached to a unit, so you can kill your opponent's Dengars. And if you do, you can deal 1 damage to that unit, triggering Boba's ability because you're dealing non-combat damage, right? Next is everyone's favorite uncommon, War Juggernaut, a 6-cost ground vehicle that's a 3/7 that says it gets a +1/+0 for each damaged unit in play, yours and your opponent's. Put this in Twin Suns, right? Now, when you play it, it gets better because when you play it, you deal 1 damage to each of any number of units, yours and your opponent's. So depending on the amount of units out there, depending on their health, you're going to be able to kill a bunch of units and really have a strong card going into your next turn. Also keep in mind, War Juggernaut deploys the same turn, or you can play this card the same turn you deploy Boba, which is pretty cool. Now, for the command aspect, it's a little bit different. I would say command has a lot of more weaker synergies, but if you find yourself with a lot of green cards that really fit what you're doing, I'm going to recommend the Kijimi Patrollers. They're a 2-cost ground unit that is a 1/1 that allows you to create TIE Fighter tokens. At the end of the day, Boba needs to deploy to a vehicle, and you want to make sure you have one as soon as possible to get that 4 points of damage going wherever you need it to go. Boba is going to be the card that's probably going to get you there really quick when it comes to damage, so having ships in play or vehicles in play is important. Now, if you're keeping a lot of vehicles in play, the Dornian gunship is going to back you up with that. It's a 5-cost space unit that's a 4/6 that says, when played, deal indirect damage to a player equal to the number of vehicle units you control. The green aspect has a lot of ways of creating vehicle tokens. So by setting yourself up, can have this gunship come out when you need it the most to either trigger Boba's ability or help you assign more unpreventable damage to your opponent's units. In the vigilance aspect, direct hit is just going to be your common best friend. Vigilance is going to struggle a little bit with Boba, but when you're dealing with a vehicle heavy set, you're going to need a 4-cost event to help you deal with those vehicles. Now, Cloak Star Viper I really like, especially if you can get a hold of a Dengar. It's a 4-cost space unit that's a 3/2, but when you play it, you're going to put 2 shield tokens on the unit. Those shields can give you a little bit more of a buff, but if you can put this on Dengar, you now have his underworld mechanic. Cloak Star Viper is a common, so you have some good chances of getting that as an answer and doing a lot of damage to your opponent with Dengar's abilities. Now, Cunning, I think, has a lot of good cards to pair with Boba Fett. The first one's going to be the Kamigolia Heavy Fighter. Did I mispronounce that? Maybe. But it is a 3/4 unit that goes into space, and when you play it, you deal 3 indirect damage to a player. Indirect damage we know is great because of Boba, but also he reads that you exhaust each unit damage this way. So if you can play the heavy fighter before your opponent gets to swing with any of their units, they have a tough decision to make. Put more damage on their base or take less attacks this turn. Next is the Mist Hunter. With so many underworld cards and pilots, Mist Hunter is going to give you a benefit at a 3 cost. It's a 3/4 with an on-attack trigger that says if you played a bounty hunter or a pilot, you may draw a card. This is good. As an uncommon, you're more than likely going to see 1, and you're definitely going to see a lot of vehicles or bounty hunters and pilots if you stay within this color, giving you some card advantage within your game. In the villain aspect, I'm going to recommend the TIE Bomber because let's take a look at this. 2-cost space unit, 0/4, that says on attack, deal 3 indirect damage to the defending player. What do you want turn 1? TIE Bomber. TIE Bomber. Look at the art. It's a classic style as it runs their own trench, apparently. But it is just a great card because it's going to have your Boba triggering every turn, and that 4 health is a little hard to deal with this early. Another great card is TIE Dagger Vanguard. It's a 3-cost 2/2 that says when played, deal 2 damage to a damaged unit. Now, 2 damage to a damaged unit is a little bit hard if you weren't playing Boba. But because you're playing Boba, you're making sure indirect damage is happening in some way, and your opponent's going to hit one of their units eventually. TIE Dagger Vanguard not only allows you to put more damage on that unit, but it can trigger Boba's ability because, again, Boba is looking for non-combat damage, so trigger. Lastly is the non-aspect cards. I'm a sucker for Swarming Vulture Droid. I like its cost. I like what it does. It gets +1/+0 for the more Vulture Droids you have in play. Swarming Vulture Droids, sorry. So if you need to fill in your spot, grab a few of these if you got them. They're a great common. And if you're going for a heavy fighter build, Flanking Fang Fighter for 3 is even cooler. It's a 2/3 that has Raid 2 as long as you have a fighter. So I like it that it can swing for 4. I think that's really great. It's going to get through some strong sentinels there. So that is my advice when playing Boba Fett at your local pre-release. Let me know how it goes for you. I want to hear what legendaries or rares really got you there. Did you get to spend the time in Star Wars Christmas Land? Did Boba just bust for you every game? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you.